Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take a complex stack of sources, pull out the absolute essentials, and give you the shortcut to being well-informed.
And today, wow.
Today we are diving into something really unexpected. It's the paradox of achievement. We're exploring what happens when you hit the summit, and that goal that drove you for years, it just vanishes.
We've synthesized some incredibly candid material for this. I mean, raw conversations, essays from musicians, world-class athletes, entrepreneurs.
People who made it.
People who really, truly made it. They defined their ambition, they achieved it, and then the entire psychological scaffolding they built their life on just, poof, collapsed.
So our mission here is to dissect that profound shift, that old fuel source, the one that was so effective it just runs dry.
And finding the new fuel is much, much harder.
And the material really zeroes in on this brutal truth. Balance is a luxury. It's something you literally can't afford on the way up. But the moment you arrive,
The money, the acclaim, the security.
you realize the goal was the journey, and you're left staring into this silent, terrifying question.
Ooh.
What then?
So we're here to help you understand the dynamics of that void.
Okay, so let's unpack that initial engine. Because I think you can't understand the crisis without first understanding the fuel, right?
Absolutely.
The sources suggest this immense drive these high achievers have is born from a massive, almost palpable gap.
Exactly. And that gap is the distance between the present self,
Right.
who you fundamentally are today, and that desired future self you're just obsessed with becoming.
That's the horizon line.
That's the horizon line, that deficiency, that distance. That is what birthed the hunger and the velocity. It gave them a clear, non-negotiable mission.
But here's the crisis. You spend, a decade running full tilt at that horizon, and then one day you wake up, you're there.
And the sources say the high achiever has this moment of realization. My present self is my past's future self.
The destination is reached, and the engine that was designed for the pursuit just stalls.
And this is where the fear changes. It's so important to get this. It's not a fear of failure anymore. It's not even a fear of complacency, like they might stop working hard.
No, these people are wired to work.
They're fundamentally wired to work. That's not the problem.
So what replaces that fear? What's the new one?
Directional ambiguity.
Okay.
Where am I going now? What is the next clear target that requires this level of intensity? And it's a uniquely difficult problem because most people are still in the first phase.
They're still running toward that initial horizon.
They're still driven by that gap.
Yeah.
So they never have to confront this kind of existential dread of having nowhere obvious to run.
It's a really simple, powerful explanation. That initial engine, that imagined future person, it works until you arrive, and then it's just gone.
Which brings us squarely to why, the money and the fame don't fill that void. The sources talk about a classic psychological phenomenon, gold medalist syndrome.
That sounds intense. What exactly is that beyond just, post-achievement blues?
It's the stark realization that the external motivators, they lose their power.
The status, the metrics, all that.
The public validation, yeah. It just stops working because, as one person put it so candidly, you simply can't keep tricking your brain into wanting another plaque or another award.
Or even another $100,000.
Or even another big check if your material needs are already met. The novelty, the rush, it's just gone.
So the narrative we always hear, right, from people who've had massive success is, it isn't the answer. The sources give us three possible ways to look at this, and I think we should unpack them.
The first two are, let's say, cynical. First, maybe they're satisfied, but they're lying. They're trying to pull the ladder up after them.
Right. Keep other people from following.
Second, maybe they're just ungrateful, unable to appreciate what they have.
But the sources kind of brush those aside.
They do, because the third reason is the one that sticks. It's so prevalent, so honest. External accolades won't fill internal voids.
I mean, the sheer consistency of that across tech, music, sports.
Yeah.
It suggests it's just, true.
To really get it, the sources offer the wrong fuel analogy. We have to think about what success actually fixes.
Okay.
Success is vital. It addresses massive material issues, shelter, resources, safety, caring for your family. That is huge. So success is the food in the analogy.
Right. If you're hungry, food is absolutely the answer.
But no amount of food, no amount of external success or status will keep you hydrated unless it contains water. And the water here is internal peace, self-acceptance, purpose.
You're trying to fuel a petrol car with electricity.
It's the wrong pathway for the emotional and existential problems you're now facing.
So if external validation is the wrong fuel for the after phase, what was that initial potent fuel, the stuff that created that insane discipline for the climb?
The initial energy, it's identified as this really volatile compound, insecurity mixed with conviction.
Wow. Explain that.
It's that internal conflict. It's, I don't feel like I'm enough, but at the same time, I absolutely believe I can become enough.
And that mixture, the sources claim, creates a psychotic level of delusional confidence. You mentioned one of the high achievers was a musician. What kind of output did that create?
The commitment was just non-negotiable. They released a song a week, every single week, for 2.5 years.
That's over 120 songs.
Over 120 songs. And that relentless output, it didn't even feel like discipline in some heroic sense. It felt like identity alignment. It was just the obvious thing to do. The insecurity gave the pressure, the conviction gave the direction.
So discipline stops being a virtue and starts being just a necessity, a function of identity.
Exactly.
But once you conquer that external world, that ambition, it doesn't just vanish. The sources say it moves houses. It relocates to the internal landscape.
This is the critical shift. These hyper-driven people suddenly turn all that intensity inward.
They start attacking the internal world.
With the same energy. Through therapy, self-reflection, they apply the exact same hypervigilance they use to perfect a product to, say, working out their relationship with their parents.
But that internal world is untapped land. For someone who lives by metrics, I mean, the lack of KPIs must be terrifying.
It is. The problem with this new domain is it has no finish line. There are no metrics of progress.
Right. You can't put a number on self-acceptance.
You can't.
Yeah.
And that makes it incredibly easy to get lost in myself and end up just doing this endless self-monitoring rumination. The same obsessive energy that built the empire now just creates internal chaos.
And sometimes that whole pursuit of self-improvement, it becomes its own kind of distraction. The sources describe it as an anesthetic against not liking who I was in the moment.
It's a really sophisticated form of procrastination. You keep delaying self-love by promising a better tomorrow me.
I'll love myself after I fix this.
Exactly. I'll be present after I master mindfulness. But once that external buoy of achievement is gone, you have to face yourself exactly as you are today. Before we go deeper on that, let's just quickly touch on the mechanisms behind that output we talked about. The source material breaks it down into 3 things.
Motivation, discipline, and obsession.
Right. Motivation is I want to do this. Discipline is I will make myself do this. And obsession, that's I can't not do this thing.
So the outcome is the same high output, but the feeling, the internal experience, is totally different.
Precisely. For these high achievers, that initial drive was often obsession mixed with that identity alignment we mentioned. That's why discipline never felt heroic or dramatic. It just felt obvious.
And as that internal focus takes over, especially in therapy, there's this natural pull to, well, point the finger.
At your parents,
So-
yeah. Attributing the broken parts of yourself to your childhood.
It's often the starting point.
But the realization tends to come pretty quickly that, their parents likely didn't have the tools themselves. They were operating from their own trauma.
Which forces you to confront this need to father myself or mother myself to take responsibility for your own emotional growth.
It's a huge step.
And this leads to what I think is one of the most powerful ideas in the sources. The parental attribution error? What is that?
It's a psychological double standard we apply to our own inheritance. We are very quick to attribute what's broken in us to our upbringing. We externalize the bad.
But the good stuff.
But we claim everything strong, ambitious, or successful is uniquely ours. We internalize the good, so we blame them for the weakness, but we take all the credit for the strength.
That's a powerful self-deception. But it's got to be painful to admit that the good and the bad might be connected.
It's incredibly difficult because it means accepting that your wounds and your gifts often share the same root.
Let's get specific. Give us one of the examples from the material.
Okay. You might blame your parents for pushing you too hard, which gave you this painful perfectionism, this neuroticism, but you ignore that the same pressure gave you the ambition, discipline, and drive that made you successful.
You can't separate them.
You can't. Or you trace your low self-worth back to a lack of praise as a kid.
A very common one.
Very. You blame that, but you have to recognize that it's the same fuel, that desperate need to prove your worth that makes you outwork everyone around you.
Or the conflict avoidance. You trace it back to a chaotic home, lots of shouting. But you ignore that the same experience gave you this incredible talent for de-escalation, and an emotional radar.
You became an expert at reading the room because your safety depended on it, and that skill is now a massive asset in your career. These things are tangled.
It's a challenging framework.
Eh.
But we have to add the caveat from the sources.
Mhm.
Not everyone can alchemize that negative input. For many, it's just damage.
Of course. And the question remains, did the strengths have to come through what the source calls all that fuckery? Or was there a healthier path? That's the work.
Okay, so let's talk about the next chapter. Once the first mountain's climbed, a lot of these people pivot. Music to acting, startup to writing. Why?
Because it's the same race in a different territory. It's about wanting to enjoy the climb again.
What do you mean?
On the first ascent, they were so focused on the goal that they were mentally at the summit the whole time. They couldn't appreciate the process. Starting something new lets them experience that beginner's mind, that hunger, all over again.
But then you face a new problem. The sources call it the Red Queen effect.
Yeah, this is from evolutionary biology. It's the idea that once you're at a high level, you now have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place.
Maintenance.
Maintenance requires massive, exhausting effort, and it's way less fulfilling than the initial climb, where every small win felt huge.
And this feeds into the realization that, there will never be a point where you have no problems. Success just swaps the material problems for these internal existential ones.
Absolutely. And the metrics that once defined your success streams, sales, they become existential threats. Declining numbers aren't just an ego situation anymore. It's an existential crisis.
Is this the beginning of the end?
Is the love going to go too? It feels like your entire identity is under threat.
Which brings up the underdog trap. This idea that more success can actually feel dangerous. Why would someone fear a #1 song?
It's about public perception. People root for you on the climb because you remind them of their own dreams. But when you get to the top, some people try to tear you down because you remind them of what they gave up on.
People want you to be in perpetual pursuit.
Just not more than them. The summit is lonely because people project their own failures onto your success.
So if the external metrics are a trap, what's the ultimate solution the sources point to for that next mountain?
It's about radical authenticity.
Yeah.
It's about creating a new internal metric of success. You have to change the question from, did the industry like it, to,
did I make what I want?
precisely. That shift is vital, because if you make something just for the audience and they reject it anyway, you will hate your audience because you sold your soul for them and they still left.
So your own internal standards have to become the real reward.
That's the only sustainable path.
So ultimately, this deep dive shows us that the fuel has to change. The external fire of insecurity and validation gets replaced by an internal drive, rooted in authenticity. Life at the top is like a balance board. Even when you look still, you're always making these tiny, micro adjustments.
And if you're struggling with this stuff, this internal shift, the sources are really clear. You have to take your life and your emotions seriously. Detachment is often just self-protection, and procrastination, that's just fear wearing a Fitbit.
Fear wearing a Fitbit, that's a great line.
It means we delay doing the hard, authentic work because we are terrified that doing your best might not be good enough, so we use delays as armor to avoid that possibility.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to chew on today. Consider the value of earnestness, the bravery to take your own life, your internal world, seriously. The sources suggest that wanting something desperately is okay, that showing your commitment is a wonderful skill to develop.
You have to define your own measure of success.
You have to, because brilliance is boring and it's subtle, and society will only ever focus on the big, spectacular failures. Your brilliance, your quiet consistency, that's for you alone to celebrate.